Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN Weekly for Saturday, October 15th, 2022. And our top story today, inflation is making Social Security solvency even worse. Today's show is powered by Funding Our Future. To learn more about Funding Our Future, its mission and its members, visit fundingourfuture.us. Joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, Emerson Sprick is with the Bipartisan Policy Center. Emerson, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate you having you on the program today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
All right, a big announcement this week. There is going to be a cost of living adjustment, or COLA, that equates to about 8.7%, and that is really due to inflation. And that really is for the beneficiary, the recipient of Social Security. But you and the folks at the Bipartisan Policy Center recently wrote a blog post about the solvency of the trust fund. So great impact for beneficiaries, got to keep up with inflation. But Emerson, what's the impact here to the trust fund itself?
Well, it's important, again, to note that this is very good for beneficiaries, for those who are receiving Social Security benefits. The CPI release on Thursday showed us that inflation prices are up 8.2% over the year. This 8.7% increase in Social Security benefits starting in, I believe, December is going to be great to offset that pain for those on Social Security. The problem is that every year the trustees of the Social Security trust funds release a big report, and one of the main takeaways is outlining the timeline on which the trust funds are scheduled to run out of money. For a long time in the 20th century, the Social Security program ran a surplus and built up these trust funds, and we're no longer running a surplus. We are depleting those trust funds to pay out benefits every year. The issue is that, so taking a step back, that report this year in 2022, it was released in June, it's indicated that the main Social Security trust fund is scheduled to run out of money in 2034, which in the grand scheme of things is not that far away.
No, it's not.
No, that doesn't mean that's when Social Security stops existing. It just means that we can stop relying on trust funds to pay out benefits. So that would result in an immediate cut of about 23% to all beneficiaries, and that would increase to, I think, around 35% over the following decades. The issue is that estimate relies on a variety of assumptions, and most of them are perfectly reasonable assumptions. One of the assumptions, though, was that this year's cost of living adjustment was going to be 3.8% rather than the 8.7% we see. And so over the next year, over 2023, the outlays for Social Security benefits are going to be far greater than what the trustees expected they were going to be, which is likely going to push up that time frame on which the trust fund is just going to run out of money.
Yeah, and that's important. So it's nearly double what the estimate was, or what the assumption was. Actually, it's more than double.
More than double
what the assumption is. Let me ask you about so with inflation typically come rising wages, typically, but will those wage increases keep up with the cost of living adjustment? In terms of taxes, in terms of tax receipts, I'm sorry.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's an important note. And there will certainly be some offsetting effects. As you're alluding to, inflation comes with both price increases and wage increases. We have seen fairly solid wage increases over the past year or two. And so as people make more money, they pay more taxes, including the payroll taxes that funded the Social Security system. That's exactly right. The problem, so I'll take one step back. In addition, and another kind of mitigating factor is that this cost of living adjustment is also going to be applied to the taxable maximum, the amount of salary on which Social Security payroll taxes are levied. So that's increasing from around $147,000 this year to just north of $160,000 next year. So there's going to be more tax revenue coming in. Our fear is that it's not going to come even close to offsetting the benefit outlays. And it's just a matter of kind of numbers, right? There are way more Social Security beneficiaries than there are people who are making between $147,000 and $160,000. And so those tax inlays, we pretty strongly doubt are going to fully outweigh this. Another important thing to remember, though, is that the trustees report that was released in June didn't just provide an assumption for this year's cost of living adjustment. It also provided the same assumption for the next 95 years, which is the time frame that they use. It estimated that it assumed rather that this year's COLA would be 3.8%. It assumed that next year's COLA would be 2.5%. And so I am optimistic that we have kind of reached peak inflation, or at least that we're very close to it, that inflation is going to start to come down, that prices will start rising at a much slower rate. I think the chances of the cost of living adjustment being 2.5% next year, down from 8.7% this year, are slim to none. And so that's just going to further exacerbate this problem.
Yeah, and Emerson, I mean, let's talk about policy. We're not going to be able to make more babies in the short term to fund Social Security. So we could have a population boom, but it would probably take 20, 30 years for us to see the results of that. So putting that aside, unless we can grow people, but this is not Attack of the Clones, Star Wars reference. But in terms of policymakers, let's, in all seriousness, you're the Bipartisan Policy Center, so the ideas that you all come up with and talk to our policymakers and their staff, what are some ways to deal with this? I mean, I would think that this Congress or the next Congress, they're going to have to address Social Security and SSI.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And we've been beating this drum for a long time. The frustrating thing is that policymakers have known that this is going to be an issue for decades. And what's particularly frustrating is that the policy solutions that could have addressed this problem in, say, 2012 were far less drastic than the policy solutions that would be required to address it now. And the policy solutions that could address it now are far less drastic than what will be required if we wait until 2034. So there are, at the core, there are three options here. One is increasing the population. And fortunately, we don't just have to birth a new group of Americans. Immigration could play an important role in a whole broad swath of things related to our economic health, and adding to the prime age labor force could really help bolster some of the payroll tax, the income that supports Social Security. Laying that aside, though, there are really two ways. If you think about, there are a few ways in which a government budget can be compared to a household budget, but the Social Security system in some ways is similar because it is completely walled off from the rest of the federal budget. So we're running out of money in this trust fund, and there are two ways that we can solve that. We can cut our outlays, or we can increase our income, i.e. cut benefits or increase taxes. Now, a lot of people hear that and they think that means a broad-based benefit cut, everyone gets their benefit cuts, or everyone pays more in taxes. And that's not really true. There are a lot of ways that we can enhance Social Security benefits, particularly for those who need them most, while still putting the program on a fiscally sustainable path. A couple of the ways to do this, and approaching one kind of from each side, would be increasing gradually the age, the full retirement age at which people can claim full benefits. When Social Security was created, the average life expectancy after age 62 was very small, and now it's something like 23 years. And so we need to have, I think, kind of a reasoned discussion about when the retirement age should be in terms of when people should be able to start claiming government benefits to support them in retirement. Another way of addressing the other side of this and increasing the revenue issue would be by increasing that taxable maximum. So as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, currently income up to only $160,000 in 2023 will be taxed for Social Security benefits. What that means is that based on how the federal tax brackets work out, between $160,000 and $210,000 ish, people making in that range actually face a marginal tax cut of 7.3% over the people who are making between something like $85,000 and the current taxable maximum. And so increasing the amount of income that each person makes that's subject to Social Security payroll taxes could be another important way to address this issue. I will say that neither of those solutions by themselves will be able to solve this problem. And that's why the Bipartisan Policy Center's commission on retirement security and personal savings recommended a package of policy reforms, 13 different policy reforms that could address this problem. And that's the kind of holistic and thoughtful review that's going to be necessary to address this. It's really, really unhelpful when policymakers say, well, we can address this problem, but there can be no tax increases, or we can address this problem, but there can be no benefit cuts, because that's impossible. We can't address the problem without either of those things.
Yeah, the math is the math. I mean, you can't outrun the math, as you said.
That's right.
Last question here, Emerson. We've got the midterms coming up. We're not going to talk about politics, but inflation certainly is probably a hot button issue for many Americans going into the midterms. Does this COLA announcement put this on the front burner for Americans in terms of decision making? Like, okay, you may not be a recipient of Social Security now. I'm not. I'm 50 years old. But at some point in the future, I hope to be. So does this put this on the front burner for many Americans going into the next 6 weeks to the election?
Yeah, something like that. I hope so. I'm not entirely optimistic that that's going to be the case. And I think there are good reasons for that. There are a lot of very pressing issues that voters are facing. And the reason that this has not been addressed in the decades since lawmakers first learned about it is that it hasn't been a pressing issue. I think that people need to start thinking about this more. I think that voters need to start thinking about this more, and lawmakers need to start taking action. I'm not sure that's going to happen in time to sway this election. I certainly hope that it begins to play a more important role in elections moving forward, particularly 2024. And I think that that's on all of us, you in the media, me in the kind of policy research space. It's on us to bring this to the forefront, to do everything we can to make sure that voters fully understand both the problems, but also that solutions are available. And they're not uniformly painful solutions. They're solutions that a lot of people actually can agree on and come together on. And there's a lot of room for bipartisan work on this. I really believe that. So I think there's room for optimism. Not sure it's going to play a big role in the 2022 elections. Yeah,
compromise is key. We used to do that. We used to really do that. Emerson, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for stopping by the program. Great analysis as always. And we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Thanks so much, Jeffrey.
And when we come back, we take a look at some of our best segments for the week. And I want to stay tuned right here on BRN Weekly. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Welcome back. Well, it was a very exciting week this week on the Broadcast Retirement Network. We kicked off the week with a look at parenting aging parents. Let's take a look.
Oh, certainly distance makes it more difficult because I'm similar where my mom lives in Houston, about 3 hours away from me. Mike's parents live in a different city as well. So I definitely think that it increases that challenge of just trying to manage, where I can't just, if mom has a computer issue, I can't just run over real fast and fix it. But I also think that even when you're in town, sometimes it can be hard because you think, oh gosh, every time mom has a little issue, do I need to run over real quick and take care of it? Which a lot of times you can, but also just trying to find what that rhythm is. And I think that every family has different challenges. And I think that, technology gives us so many opportunities where I can FaceTime my mom, I can look at her computer, I can look at her, and we can have a conversation, like we're together. So I think technology certainly helps that not feel so apart. But I think that just in society in general, because transportation is easier, so that we can see each other, where I guess in the, kind of in the old days, it wasn't that easy. So people tended to stay closer together, I think.
I think it does considerably because times have changed. When my sister and I first talked to my dad about moving my mom and my dad into independent living out of the house that they lived in, that 7 years ago, we started talking to him about it. My dad was very welcome to it and very happy about it. But in his mind, he was picturing a nursing home like my grandfather lived in back in the 80s, his last couple of years of life, which isn't a fun scenario to think about if you're in your 70s or 80s. But then he realized that, times have changed since even the 80s to where, they have independent living, they have assisted living, they have memory care that are really nice places. You're well kept, you're taken care of very, very well. And because of that, it's a different attitude environment for our aging parents to understand. I think we have to realize, the way they grew up. Yeah, when we had my mom and dad, when we said, Dad, you're really going to need to sell the house. You don't need it anymore. It's just a burden to you. You're going once a week over there to check on it, and you got to hire somebody to mow the yard and stuff like that. It's like there's no reason to do that anymore. And he did sell the house, and afterwards he talked to me and said, you know what? I just don't like this because I don't own anything anymore. I said, well, but Dad, you have the money in the bank. He said, I know, but son, I don't own anything anymore. And we have to realize, again, people who grew up in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, it meant something to own something. And so, there's a lot of way America, society has changed through those times from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, on and on and on, even since the 80s with the nursing home situation. So we have to, I think, give our aging parents a little bit of grace about that because times have changed.
And I think that also the environments have changed. My mom was living by herself in a house and wasn't able to drive anymore. So the idea of moving her into an independent living actually has allowed her to have lots of interaction, lots of activities that she wouldn't be able to do as easily if she was living at home in her house by herself. I think having those conversations before it really is even an issue is super important because that way you kind of know a little bit about what their desires might be, what they might be open to. I do know that when we brought up the subject with my mom a few years ago, she did not respond to, as positively as we would have liked, and said, "Oh no, I'm not leaving my house." So we thought, "Oh, this is going to be challenging." But I think that over time, she warmed up to the idea. But interestingly, I think you have to know your parent and what sort of drives them. With my mom, it ended up being that when her brother came in town and suggested they go look at a couple of places after she wasn't able to drive anymore, she was more open to it when he suggested it than when I did or my brother did. And so again, it's sort of knowing their personality. And I think also we were able to appeal to my mom about the fact of that water leak that you just had, and you had to worry about getting the repair people out and taking care of it, and you're having to cook for yourself, and you're not eating as healthy as you should be because you're having to do it yourself, and you're just having yogurt for lunch. That's probably not a great idea every single day. And so I think it was appealing to my mom in that situation of the things that she would get rather than the things that she would lose was very effective. But you have to know your parents' personality and what will kind of drive them. And I think that, when there's a spouse or a partner involved, that also can be a different conversation. I think that's what happened with your family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other thing that you have to understand is that we all have different family dynamics. So you have to keep that in mind, because the conversation that I had with my dad was different than the one that Kim had with her mom. It's different than the one you would have with your parents, because we all have different personalities. We all have different relationships with our parents, and all of our parents have different social and economic situations. Mm-hmm. So, as far as money, as far as where they want to live, as far as what they can afford, everything, it all piles up. Mm-hmm. And so everyone's at a different level and everyone's in a different space. Mm-hmm. So that's the one thing that makes it tough about this situation, is there's no blueprint about here's how you do it. Mm-hmm. Because everyone is so different, and that makes it so tough. But
I think with your dad, you were able to say, this will be better for mom.
Yeah.
And that made him more open to the idea.
But because my dad is very thrifty. I'll say that in a nice way. In other words, he doesn't like to spend his money.
like that. Frugality is top of mind for me. But anyway,
but because of that, when he looked at it's going to cost how much to live in this independent living? Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. It's like, okay, it's going to be better for you and for mom.
Well, because her Alzheimer's was progressing. And so it really was going to be.
Yeah. And the same thing with selling the house, the same thing with moving her to memory care, which we did a couple of years ago. All these things, and again, it goes to my dad's personality, that he's very loving and caring, and he's been married to my mom for 62 years, and he'll do anything for her, and that's why he wants to do it. Other people aren't quite the same, so you have to look at their personality, look at your family dynamics, and figure it out from there.
And we also discussed how collective investment trusts are gaining momentum in retirement programs. Let's take a look.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jeff. And to back up the history that you shared just a moment ago, I've been on the planet for a little over 5 decades myself, and CITs have been around even longer than that. And what's interesting about that history is, though they started up in the Fortune 100 realm, they've gradually drifted down market. And as that's happened, you've seen what were pretty high investment minimums peeled away. So now, Jeff, they're literally just available for more people. More people qualify, so to speak. I mean, theoretically, you could even have a startup 401k plan be able to use CITs, whereas in the past, that was not possible. But I think the big issue is to think about whatever the product is, who likes to buy something when it's on sale? I think that, all of us. I see you raising your hand, Jeff.
I think we're all raising our hand on that one.
That's for sure. We all like to buy something when it's on sale. And so what you see with CITs often is they may even be an investment strategy that a 401k plan already owns, but the price of the management fee and all-in fee total expense ratio is lower than what it would be in a similar mutual fund product. So I think that's where, Jeff, you begin to quickly catch the attention of plan sponsors, is that chance to buy something that maybe even they already own, maybe even they already like, but buy it when it's on sale.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate the time today. And to piggyback off of Mike's answer, I think we're generally seeing that growth across all plan sizes and eligible investor types. So eligible investors today are defined benefit plans, defined contribution plans, and governmental 457 plans. hopefully here in the near future, we're going to see legislation passed through Secure 2.0 that will allow for 403Bs to invest in CITs. And we're all rooting hard for that. And hopefully we can get Congress to come together and actually pass a bipartisan bill, which is out there for us. But we're seeing it up and down the spectrum for all plan types. And really what we're also seeing is broad use across all asset classes. So just like you would see in most plans, target dates are a big hit with CITs, but moving through your various Morningstar style boxes, we're seeing strong application of use across all retirement plan types in CITs.
Yeah, so arguably you're going to need a strong custodian like what Rob from Wilmington Trust represents, because they are the backbone from an operations standpoint, from a technological standpoint. So you're going to want to make sure that you have a good partner, that's for sure, because they're going to help you from that standpoint. However, you obviously need to start with, well, do we have demand? And where is the demand coming from? As Rob so correctly mentioned, there's only certain plan types that can own CITs in the first place. And I won't go over the list that he already mentioned, but therefore, you got to make sure, do we have the right demand coming from the right place? And then once we set up this CIT, will it have enough money in it initially to be viable and to be attractive? And that's where you'd work directly with the money managers of the strategy to find out from them, hey, does this look like something that we would want to pursue in a CIT structure to complement maybe what we already have in the mutual fund structure? So again, that custodian, Jeff, is going to play a key role in helping once the decision is made at the asset manager level.
So what we've seen over the last 6 to 8 years is greater transparency of information for CITs, whether that's been through utilization of tickers, which we pioneered with the NASDAQ. So plan participants, plan sponsors, plan advisors can type in a ticker and go out on the internet, in whether it's Yahoo Finance or Google Finance or your stocks app on your iPhone, be able to look up price and performance information on CITs. So you're seeing a lot of better transparency and evolution from CITs in this space. And what you're also seeing is CITs being picked up in databases more frequently. So it's better access to information at Morningstar, better access to information at some of your other firms who are information providers to advisors and ultimately to record keepers and plan sponsors.
Well, so I think, Jeff, fair question. If you go to the background or the foundation of Secure 2.0, it's all about coverage, right? Expanding coverage so as many American workers as possible are covered by payroll deduction workplace savings plans. So truly, the Secure 2.0 is all about coverage. And we already all put our hands up when we said, who likes to buy anything when it's on sale? Why should there be an excluded group, rather randomly excluded group, when it comes to the potential cost savings available in CITs? It's hard to wrap your head around why we're taking, again, in many cases, educators from higher education and elementary education, quite frankly, K through 12 education, Jeff, and we're not allowing them to come into this potentially more efficient way to buy investments. It makes no sense.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. And our job really is just to educate. Let the elected officials, the pros, make their decisions, but our job is to educate here. And I think if you go back to some of the earlier questions you asked us, so where are we seeing traction? We're seeing traction in smaller plans. And if you go back to Mike's first question, he talked about how smaller plans are getting access. Well, what that does is it levels the playing field for smaller investors, and those are the investors who need the savings that Mike is referring to in this, because it makes the most difference. If your bigger plans with your bigger balances get savings, that's great, because they're using their scale. But these smaller plans have been able to use scale and being able to get that extra cost savings. That's something that those participants it's just as meaningful, if not more meaningful, to those participants. And so when you think about Secure 2.0 and 403Bs not being eligible, if we can get 403B eligible, right? Teachers' compensation is a continued talking point. Whether it's every year, every collective bargaining position, these teachers aren't paid enough. And the way that we're impacting their retirement savings by not allowing CITs or lower cost investments is also hindering them. So ways that we can help people achieve a dignified retirement really is through approving this legislation and letting their advisors advise the plan sponsors as to what is the best path for those plans. Because that's where this really lies, is in the advisor's court and the consultant's court to do their work, to help the plan sponsor justify what's best for them, not necessarily legislation.
Well, certainly great segments. I want to thank all of our guests this week. And that wraps up this episode of BRN Weekly. Have a topic of interest, somebody you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, entertainment, so much more, and all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Post. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content? Well, visit our website and, of course, all of our streaming partners. We're back again tomorrow for BRN Sunday. I'll be joined by members of the media, academia, financial services, and government as we break down all the news and events for the week. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes. Now it's your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the First Lifestyle and Wellness Network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.